I'm at the little town of Bethlehem. This is the place we sing about every Christmas Eve when we proclaim the hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight. Here is where a choir of angels announced the birth of Jesus, and to a most unlikely group. They were, after all, just humble shepherds, and they were the first invited guests to visit the newborn. When the angels came, they gave the lowly shepherds a promise and a message of peace, peace on earth to those of good will. But this idea of peace on earth is a tough one. This very ground is part of the West Bank in the Holy Land. It's a place that knows way too much conflict. But the first thing that the angel said to the shepherds that night was, "Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid." The command given most frequently in all the Bible is simply this: fear not, or do not be afraid. And it comes at so many of the major turning points in the Bible. They are the words given, for example, to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joshua, Daniel, also to Mary, and later to Joseph, and to the shepherds, and to the women who came to the tomb of Jesus and found his body was missing. Over and over, Jesus himself spoke the same assurance to his disciples, to the multitudes, to those who were sick. We might even say that the grand underlying theme of the Bible is to not be afraid. And it's clear that transcending fear and finding peace go hand in hand together. In dealing with cancer, it's perhaps as important as any medicine or treatment that we take. One of the great pictures in the Bible that points in this direction is the transformation of weapons of war into instruments of peace. The book of Isaiah speaks of a time when nations will no longer go to war, a time when they will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. This is the kind of plow that Jesus would likely have worked on in his father's carpenter shop. And the beautiful image of converting swords into plowshares conveys the radical vision that the attitude, ingenuity, the investment that we pour into weapons of destruction instead be put into instruments of peace. The weapons of war at so many levels, are so often fashioned out of fear. So a key question becomes, how do we face our fears and work to change them into instruments of peace? For those of us dealing with cancer or those terrified of getting cancer, this becomes very practical and personal, and here's why. Cancer is commonly presented to us as a war. President Nixon declared an expensive war on cancer way back in 1971. Well, guess what, folks? That war has not yet been won. After decades, it's still raging on. And some experts now tell us that over 1 of every 3 people will be diagnosed with some kind of cancer in their lifetime. Every year, over $14 billion is spent on cancer research. Since President Nixon declared the war on cancer in 1971, some $200 billion has been sent on research to cure cancer. And the so-called survival gains are more often measured in additional months of life for the patient rather than years. And of course, the cancer war goes on at both the societal and the personal level. We hear all the time of someone who died after a strong and heroic battle or prolonged fight against their cancer. My friends, what I'm going to confess now is not medical advice in any way. It's only my personal testimony, and it's this. I guess I've gone AWOL. I refuse to look any longer on my cancer as a war front. I no longer see myself as a soldier in the trenches of the cancer conflict. I have no desire whatever to end up as a shattered corpse on some cancer battlefield. As I've come to see it, if we are in a battle or a war with cancer, then it has to be a brutal civil war. We're fighting ourselves. So my outlook has gradually and I think radically changed. Instead of seeing cancer as a battle, I seek to treat it as a conversation. That's where I need to listen to what cancer has been telling me about my body, my lifestyle, and some pretty serious changes I've needed to make. And just as important as listening to the body is talking to our bodies, telling it what's happening, what's coming, and what we need to ask of it. Further, I've come to see cancer as a kind of classroom of our amazing bodies. I'm continually learning more and more about how, as the Bible so wonderfully puts it, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Also, it's a time of cooperation. How much we need to work with our immune system to support it to do the job that it can do better than any medicine. So, more and more, what that means for me is this. It's a time of communication between soul and body, and that extends even down to the cellular level of the body. Now, I'm so concerned that I'm clear that I'm not in any way talking about our giving up or resignation. It's really just the opposite. What I'm talking about is perhaps a new kind of acceptance, engagement, and cooperation. I think what I'm trying to get at was well put in Anne Lamott's book, Traveling Mercies. It's about a man with lung cancer, and it had metastasized to his brain. He said how I'm now so savoring the moments of my life, and I'm so acutely aware of love and small pleasures that I no longer feel that I have a life-threatening disease, but rather I have a disease-threatening life. This has become for me the way of faith, to face the cancer issue with confidence, a confidence that God will give the grace to transcend or the strength to endure. And whatever comes, it can be faced with peace and with confidence, rather than with shattered nerves or unrelenting stress or that paralyzing fear that comes from the battlefield mentality. Now, I grant you, this is a big, complicated, and quite uncharted territory. And frankly, it runs counter to the entrenched battlefield metaphors. And if by now you're wondering, have I got some kind of screw loose? Let me just observe this. Yes, it is strange to imagine a world without war, or to see cancer as something other than a war zone. But the biblical vision is nothing less than to see our swords turned into plowshares, our battlefields into beautiful and fruitful olive groves. We become what we behold, What vision do you prefer? Which is more worthy? Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God.